The day the dark clouds finally broke, Lyra convinced her grandfather to take her to the Menagerie of Echoes. Its white spires crouched behind a perimeter wall of oxidized copper. But the old news feeds called the place a labyrinthian zoo, and at street level it was more maze than monument. A tangle of spiraling ramps, curved panes of smart glass, galleries that braided like strands of DNA. Lyra had memorized the tram map that led there, yet still got lost 3 times in the rain-soaked plazas outside, as if the building's angles already worked their confusions on the city around it. Grandfather Fletcher teased her about the detours, but kept pace, silver cane ticking on puddled concrete. "Beneath all the architecture," he said, "there's only one rule. If you care, it stays. If you don't, it goes." He tapped the entrance marquee where the slogan glowed. "Your wonder feeds the wilds." Then his voice tightened. "Last time I came, the swans still circled the lagoon." He did not add that the lagoon was now a projection on a half-dome ceiling, an illusion powered by the emotions of tourists, schoolchildren, anybody with a pulse and a passing curiosity. Inside, the lobby inhaled them. Cool air, resin smell, a hush both funerary and expectant. 1,000 micro-projectors embedded in the walls shimmered to life when the ticket scanners caught their biometrics. The floor itself lit up. Slow, bioluminescent ripples flowing out ahead, mapping a path deeper into the structure. A docent drone in the shape of a cobalt hummingbird flitted near Lyra's shoulder. "Welcome, heartbeats," it chirped, voice pitched just above the hush. "Your feelings sustain 321 remaining species. Should aggregate affect drop below threshold, exhibits may degrade. Please emote responsibly." Lyra laughed despite herself. Emote responsibly sounded like a public service announcement from someone's dystopian satire. Except the satire had arrived, real enough to charge 40 credits ahead. Grandfather Fletcher pocketed the printed guide he'd insisted on requesting. "Paper remembers," he muttered. The sheet bore a stylized maze, each concentric ring labeled with habitats: verdant weald, ember savanna, noctilucent reef. The center of the labyrinth was the vault, rumored home to the most fragile projections, creatures that needed more than gawking delight, that required awe tinged with something like love. In the outer ring, crowds bunched under a forest canopy of green lasers. Holographic spider monkeys skittered across branches that weren't there, the projectors strobing quicksilver fur. Children squealed, reaching with both curiosity and skepticism. Every time a laugh burst or a gasp escaped, the monkeys brightened, lines sharper, colors denser. Then a bored teen shoved hands into pockets, head down to stream something on her visor, and a mother checked messages against her wristlet. The shine on a spider monkey's tail dimmed, hair by hair, until its edges blurred like chalk and mist. Lyra felt it, the exhibit breathing through the visitors. Not metaphor, but mechanism. She imagined capacitors spooling up on surges of wonder, draining on shrugs and indifference. Her skin goose-pimpled from the pressure. They moved on. The crowd thinned, as if most guests would not or could not brave the inner rings. Lyra suspected some were frightened, not of losing their way, but of confronting the evidence of everything already lost. At the border of Ember Savannah, sensors detected their approach and switched weather presets from dusk to sunrise. Horizon screens flared crimson. The air warmed 3 degrees. A pride of lions emerged, but only half the pride, 3 females and a single male. Their bodies shimmered with a granular flicker, like low-bandwidth footage. One lioness lifted her muzzle, snuffed the synthetic air, then coughed into nothingness, her entire form dissolving in a hush of vanishing pixels. An alert ribbon scrolled overhead, emotion levels subcritical. Species, Panthera leo. Situation, near null continuity. A child asked his father why the cat was broken. The father shrugged, scrolling news. The lion's remaining shapes dulled. Grandfather Fletcher gripped the railing. "Wasn't always this thin," he whispered. "First year after the Great Blight, you needed overflow halls just to house them." Lyra tried to summon awe, or even sorrow, but the cascade of disappearances over her lifetime had numbed everything. She remembered biology classes that taught evolution like an obituary column, past tense verbs replacing present. Wonder had become a rare element, yet she tried. She inhaled and pictured a golden mane in a real wind, muscles bunching under sun-hot skin, her heart drumming with mammalian kinship. A second lioness sharpened back into clarity. The process was visible, from ghost to photograph, to something that felt almost alive. The male's ears flicked. He turned golden eyes on Lyra, manner almost grateful. She felt his simulated breath ripple air. It smelled like nothing, but the absence struck her like grief. The male roared, not a good speaker roar, but a rattling cough that bounced in her chest. Visitors nearby paused, eyes lifting from screens, a quick infusion of startle, then fascination. The pride stabilized. Status ribbons shifted to yellow. Caution, then to gold. Sufficient. "That's better," Grandfather said, though his voice trembled, but a small crowd can't carry a continent. They followed exit trails lit in amber, to warn them they were close to the vault. Between rings, corridors looped back on themselves, a spatial puzzle rumored to reconfigure each dawn, as if the building refused to give up its secrets too readily. Lyra liked that. The zoo's mind adjusting to moods the way a brain lays down new roots after trauma. Halfway to the next gateway, she discovered a viewing alcove with no queue. On the far wall, a swarm of holographic monarch butterflies fluttered inside a transparent cube. Each wing beat made musical chimes, delicate latticework of orange and black. A tiny sign, "The Journey." Beneath, species count, 12. Below that, energy demand, high. Lyra recalled old documentaries showing millions of monarchs migrating across continents. 12 looked like punctuation marks, lost from their sentence. She stared until her eyes prickled. Something inside her chest turned molten and bright, a feeling too complex for a single word. Shame, yearning, protectiveness flaring together. The swarm multiplied, from 12 to 20, 30, then 50 individuals shimmered into being, the cube blooming into a storm of color. The new arrivals pirouetted, saturating space with fractal motion. People walking past halted, breathed small exclamations. They tossed seeds of surprise into the system, and more butterflies materialized, spinning like prayers. Then a man outside the alcove yawned, checked the time, tugged his companion onward. A teenage girl laughed that they looked too perfect, like cheap jewels. Lyra watched the numbers overhead tick backwards. 82, 60, 41. Her breath snagged. She felt the swarm thinning as if someone plucked threads out of skin. The cube dimmed again. She couldn't bear it. She hurried away. The road to the vault coiled downward. Speakers embedded in stone played fragments of birdsong, but gaps where files had corrupted left silences between trills, ghost notes, endings frayed. At last, a gate admitted them to a round antechamber. A single bench curved under a mosaic of extinct amphibians. Blue glass frogs, ruby salamanders, sketched in tiles that reflected visitors' faces, so animals and humans merged in glare. A lone attendant sat at a kiosk, eyes luminous behind light-sensitive lenses. "Good afternoon," he said. His name badge read, Mercer, Curator. Beard salted with gray, posture lean but alarmed, like a crane poised to lift. "Entry to the vault requires elevated empathic indices. Rated on approach. Both of you pass." He tilted his head at Lyra. "Especially the young miss." "How do you measure that?" Grandfather asked. Mercer tapped a console. "Pulse variability, micro-expressions, galvanic response and palm sweat. Standard psychophysiology. But essentially, it's still a guess. Human hearts are noisy data." He studied them. "Truth is, you'll be among the few today. Attendance dropped 30% this quarter. Began when the whales flickered out last solstice. After losing giants, people doubt everything smaller." Grandfather's knuckles whitened around his cane. "Is there any plan to decouple the exhibits from this emotional economy? Hook them to grid power, perhaps?" "Wouldn't matter," Mercer said. "Light without feeling is just wallpaper. We tried. The projections became superficial. The AI modeling fauna dynamics degraded. They performed motions but lacked emergent spontaneity, like puppets missing souls. Visitors noticed. Attendance dwindled further, and without new inputs, even the algorithms withered. The architects designed a closed symbiosis. You must meet the animals halfway." Lyra looked past him at the next door. Matte black, shaped like an iris. "What's left in there?" Mercer hesitated. "More than nothing. Less than yesterday. Some call them the Ark's echo. But you'll see." He stepped aside. They entered. The vault was a cathedral hollowed from darkness, vast enough that its edges dissolved. The roof rose into simulated night, strewn with stars that reacted to motion, sliding into halos around heads. The floor sprawled in platforms of rock, grass, water surfaces, as still as obsidian. It felt like the planet's memory had been folded into a single dream. Creatures moved within. A Sumatran orangutan brachiating between invisible beams of light. An Iberian lynx stalking phantom rabbits. A shoal of vaquita porpoises gliding through mid-air. Water rendered by volumetric particles, too fine to see but cool when they brushed Lyra's cheeks. Each animal glowed as if lit from within. Bioluminescent skeletons clothed in fur or scale. Illusions dense enough to cast pale shadows. Above them hovered status orbs, green if stable, amber if critical, red if terminal. 17 species remained. Some labels displayed timers, an hour, 15 minutes, a handful of seconds. The ones in immediate peril pulsed angry red. Lyra spotted an Appalachian blue crayfish with 25 seconds on its clock. A digital heartbeat chart dangled overhead, flatlining notch by notch. She had never seen a crayfish outside images. She had no reservoir of nostalgia for it, no personal memory. She tried to conjure fascination, but felt only the mechanical urgency of a deadline. 15 seconds. She whispered facts dredged from school. They lived in cold mountain streams. They burrowed under rocks. They cleaned detritus. 10 seconds. She pictured the specific blue of twilight, water over her ankles, stones slick beneath toes. 5 seconds. Wonder prickled, brief, bright. The timer stopped at 2. Color bled back into the creature's carapace. It flexed translucent claws and scuttled across an imagined stream bed. Lyra exhaled, heart sprinting. Grandfather leaned heavily on his cane. "Every moment's a triage," he said, "and one day we won't arrive in time." Mercer's voice echoed behind them. He had followed at a distance. "There's another possibility," he said. "A sustained resonance. Enough collective emotion to anchor them, maybe indefinitely." "Like a choir holding a note?" Lyra asked. "Exactly," Mercer answered. "But choirs need songs the whole congregation believes." As if to underscore his point, Alarms tolled. Red light cascaded across the ceiling. Status: terminal. Species: Polar Ursus maritimus. Time bar drained to 0. Lyra watched polar bears materialize not from presence, but from absence, meaning they were there 1 second. A mother and cub standing on a floe of simulated ice, and then they weren't. The ice winked out. A hush swallowed the spot. The void looked obscene among so much curated life. Visitors gasped. Some cursed. A child began to cry. His distress, ironically, spiked the emotional field. The gauge on a nearby sola leapt from amber to gold, horns engraving light. But anger also flourished. A man shouted that ticket prices ought to include basic reliability. 2 women swapped cynical jokes about management. The crowd's mood buckled into resentment, a fertile cousin of apathy as far as the system was concerned. Gauges flickered. Lyra felt panic balloon. If negative affect counted for less than 0, everything could implode. She glanced up. More amber lights emerging. The orangutan's halo deepened to orange. Grandfather touched Lyra's shoulder. "What can we add?" he asked softly. She swallowed. Something bigger than ourselves. Around them, speakers crackled. Mercer was addressing the crowd, voice climbing above noise. "Ladies and gentlemen, the exhibits are fragile. Your presence matters. Please recall a moment of connection to the animal world, any world, real or imagined. Hold it. Share it." Some rolled eyes, but others listened. A teacher wrapped arms around her students, murmuring about field trips long past. A boy mimed casting a fishing line. Microphones on ceiling stalks tracked every spoken memory, feeding the system. Lyra closed her eyes. She needed more than scraps. She thought of childhood mornings on the roof when her mother, still alive, pointed at swallows carving figure 8s under dawn. Their chittering had sounded like laughter scribbled on sky. The memory ripened. Sunlight on hair, the smell of cinnamon toast, the small, big sense of belonging to a tapestry of wing, wind, heartbeat. Emotion surged. A warm tide cresting behind her ribs, unstoppable. She opened her eyes. In the vault's center stood a creature Lyra had never heard of. A prism tiger whose stripes shimmered prismatically, colors shifting with each breath. It wasn't from Earth's extinct catalog, but a composite dreamed by the system to represent possibility. Its gauge soared green, then emerald, then a new shade labeled iridescent. Visitors noticed. Gasps turned to applause, tears, astonished laughter. The tiger roared, a chord of cello and aurora. Each stripe left contrails of light that sketched plants where paws fell. As the crowd's exhilaration washed outward, the Saola brightened. The orangutan's gauge blazed gold. The vaquita school pulsed neon. Timers halted. Mercer placed a hand over his heart. "That's resonance," he breathed. But the surge proved unstable. Peaks generate valleys. After the initial blaze, energy threatened to dip. Wonder, Lyra realized, was metabolically expensive. You couldn't maintain high pitch forever. The system needed a sustainable supply, a rhythm rather than a spike. She stepped onto a platform. A ring of sensors glowed at her shoes. "Stories," she called, voice trembling but loud. "Tell them stories, not just memories. Tell what the world could be." Mercer caught on. Envision futures where these lives thrive again. Inside forests regrown, seas unpoisoned, cities that keep corridors for migration. Speak it so the labyrinth can hear. The teacher's class began chanting predictions. They would study ecology, invent cleaner tech, restore grasslands. An older couple improvised a vow to volunteer with coastal rehabilitation. Every pledge was a seed of directed emotion, hope tempered by agency. The gauges stabilized at a lively green. The prism tiger lay down. exhaling ribbons of light that twined into sapling trees, which rooted and sprouted leaves across the vault. A virtual ecosystem bootstrapped itself from the crowd's intent. Bees pollinated blooming pixels. Frogs croaked among lily holograms. The place no longer felt like a museum, but a nursery. Grandfather Fletcher whispered to Lyra, "You've started them singing." She shook her head. We all did. Time passed. She could not tell how long. Eventually, Mercer announced visiting hours were ending. Gauges still gleamed healthy. The crowd dispersed reluctantly, as if leaving a campfire whose embers they'd guarded. Outside the vault, Mercer pulled Lyra and her grandfather aside. He looked exhausted but luminous. "You saved more than a few projections today," he said. "We logged the highest sustained affect in 2 years. If we can keep programming resonance events, story circles, choral sessions, perhaps the extinction's slow." "Perhaps," Grandfather said. "But what then? Even perfect holograms can't seed oceans or recolonize air." "True," Mercer replied. "Yet data gathered from these emergent models informs bioprint labs. The more sophisticated the behavior, the better we map genomes, anticipate environmental needs. Emotion isn't only power, it's feedback. A blueprint for restoration, should we grow courageous." He offered Lyra a slim card, a volunteer credential. "The labyrinth could use storytellers," he said. "People who refuse apathy." She took it, pulse thundering. For a second, she felt the prism tiger's reflected light linger on her palms, as if granting silent benediction. They left through corridors less confusing now, as though the building approved. In the lobby, the hummingbird drone escorted them to the exit. "Aggregate affect remains elevated," it reported. "We thank your hearts." Rain had stopped outside. The copper wall mirrored sky regaining blue. Birds, the real kind, hardy pigeons, cooed from ledges, wings smeared in sun. They weren't swallows, but they were enough for the moment. Grandfather Fletcher asked if she felt tired. "No," Lyra said, realizing it was true. A different energy throbbed, something seed-like. She looked back at the spires of the menagerie, labyrinth written against the heavens. The world beyond still reeled with crises, but somewhere inside that maze, light poured into shapes that might one day leap from projection to flesh. All they asked in return was vigilance of the heart. Lyra squeezed the volunteer card. "Let's come again next week," she said. "We've got stories to practice."